Today we're discussing all the latest NHL trade rumors, including the Flyers making a really hard push for Seth Jones. We have the possibility of a package deal here with OEL maybe going to the Edmonton Oilers. It appears as though the Rangers are back in on Eichel. Vladimir Tarasenko is very much available. We have some big signings as well, including Wayne Simmonds, Nugent-Hopkins, a coaching announcement in Buffalo, and a whole lot more. We'll discuss all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned in front of the opener here, we have a absolutely lot of news to cover today. So again, it's one of those videos you're going to want to listen close, pay attention, and please watch all the way through because there's a lot to cover here, and I don't want you to miss any important news features. Now, let's kick things off with a couple of very important signings today for a couple of teams. First up, the big one of the day was Nugent-Hopkins re-signing with the Edmonton Oilers on an 8-year contract. Now, he gets $41 million over that 8-year period, which puts him at an average annual value of $5.125 million, which to me, that's a great AAV for Nuge. I have no issues with that. There is some risk to the term, of course. A lot of this is going to depend on him staying healthy. He's currently 28, so he'll be 36 when the contract expires. So certainly there's a little bit of risk, but I think at this point, if they can even get 4 or 5 healthy, productive years out of him with this contract, I think they'll be quite happy. Obviously, they prefer more, but at the end of the day here, when teams take on these deals, they understand that the last year or two might not be the greatest, but at that point, you're kind of paying for past performance, and to a degree, you are now. But I think it's fair to say that he would have gotten more money if he would have waited and hit free agency on the open market. Obviously, wouldn't have been able to get 8 years, but he probably would have got somewhere between 5 and 7 years from a lot of teams making offers. I would say probably $6 million or slightly better. So I think it's fair to say he took a little bit of a hometown discount to stay with the Oilers and try to win there. It certainly shows he's committed. And as I mentioned before, I thought it was very important they try to keep this guy because outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, they're certainly lacking some forward depth. They don't have a lot of secondary scoring that's consistent and capable of being that number 3, number 4 player. If they lost Nugent-Hopkins, they would be in even worse predicament. Now, of course, doesn't mean they couldn't go after somebody else in free agency or something to maybe replace him, but still, he seems to fit there. He can play center when need be. He can play on the wing with Draisaitl as well as McDavid. He's done both. So, to me, this is a great signing. A little bit of risk on the end of it, yes, but overall, I think it's a terrific number that works well for both the player and the team. Now, the other signing today, which I will admit was a little bit surprising, we talked about it yesterday being a possibility, so it's not a complete shocker, but I thought they might wait to announce it possibly post-expansion draft. But the Toronto Maple Leafs have announced they've signed veteran forward Wayne Simmonds, who was there last year, to a 2-year extension. This time, though, it's a little bit less money. I believe last time he was making around 1.5. This one, the average annual value is at $900K, so it's $1.8 million over 2 years. I'm a little surprised he hit the second year, but at the same time, that's probably how he was able to get the average annual value down. He probably would have wanted a little bit more money on a 1-year term, but he's 32. Going on, he'll be 34 when it expires. They recently re-signed Jason Spezza, so you have to wonder how much of the same team they're going to try to bring back. I know when we did the Maple Leafs offseason video, I speculated that Spezza might be the only older veteran that returns, and that guys like Thornton and Simmonds may not come back, and as much as they lack that killer instinct that everybody's been saying, including Brendan Shanahan, Simmonds theoretically can provide that, but failed to do so when it mattered most in the playoffs. He had a good start to his career in Toronto, but then after his injury, just never really seemed the same and was really quiet in the playoffs. So obviously they still believe in this guy, but at some point we're going to see some different changes within this group, you have to think, given their playoff disappointment here yet again. But Simmonds returns to the Leafs on a 2-year deal, which, like I said, a little bit surprising, but it's done. So I guess with the expansion draft implications, we'll have to see who they decide to protect and who they decide to expose here. But I thought because of that, they might wait, but here it is. It's official. Now, speaking of official, we finally have word out of Buffalo about their head coaching position, and there will be no change. Interim head coach Don Granato has become the permanent head coach on a 3-year contract extension for him. So obviously the Sabres and Kevin Adams wanted to wait and talk to other candidates. It's believed they talked to Rick Tocchet, and he was probably one of the few other coaching candidates that were still involved down to the wire here. And ultimately they've decided to stick with their interim, which to me was a great choice. He saw a lot of improvements near the end of that year, last year. And the big thing for me is he actually got a lot of improvements out of the young players who could still be core pieces for this team moving forward, especially like a Casey Middlestat, who's had a rough start to his career. He finally found a way to get some more productivity out of him. Rasmus Dahlin's another one. And those guys are really important to get them back on track with their development. And Granato seemed to be able to find ways to do that. So I'm really happy to see that they stuck with him, stuck with the plan. Obviously, there's going to be other changes to the roster that he'll have to deal with. But at the end of the day, I think he's a good coach, deserves an opportunity and to carry on with the momentum he started to find with this group at the end of last year. We do have another find from the NHL playoffs. Of course, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals went last night between the Montreal Canadiens and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which saw Tampa win in fairly decisive fashion. And Habs captain Shea Weber was fined $5,000, which is the maximum allowed under the CBA for slashing on Nikita Kucherov. Not a big deal. There was all kinds of cross-checking and everything given out last night. It was a bit of a game that we saw lots of hard hitting, and obviously we got Brendan Gallagher leaving the ice with his blood all over the ice. It was a little bit of a scary situation when he got tangled up there with Sergachev, but at the end of the day, he appears to be okay and is expected to play in Game 2 tomorrow evening. One other quick signing as well, the Avalanche have re-signed goaltender Jonas Johansson, who they did pick up from Buffalo last year. They've signed him to a 1-year contract extension. It's a 2-way deal and pays him $750,000 at the NHL level. I assume he'll be kept around mostly for insurance purposes, likely end up being a number 3, but of course we don't know really what they're going to end up doing yet because they still have Philip Grubauer, who's a UFA, and the status of Pavel Francouz I think is debatable as well. So we'll see what they do, but nice to at least have one goalie who played with them last year under contract and ready to roll. During Gary Bettman's pre-Stanley Cup final media availability yesterday, we did get some tidbits of news. For starters, Vegas will be hosting an All-Star game in 2022, which is not overly surprising. There's been a lot of speculation they would be getting one in the very near future. I know Florida is likely going to be getting one here as well because they were supposed to host the one that ended up getting postponed due to the pandemic. So they will likely be in 2023 or 24. I don't know when they're going to get it. So I think maybe some fans might be a little upset it didn't go directly back there. But either way, they're going to Vegas, and there's still concern and speculation on whether or not the NHL will be going to the Olympics. They have every intention to, from what we can see, except they have to work out all the final details with the IOC to make everything happen, and that's not yet finalized. Some think that there is a possibility we could see a short All-Star break followed by the Olympic break in next year's calendar. And some also say that because there's going to be an All-Star game and an All-Star break in next year's season calendar, that is not a good sign trending for the Olympics to actually take place with NHL players being involved, that they don't see there being 2 stoppages. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. Obviously be very sad and unfortunate if the NHL players didn't get to go, considering what was negotiated into the CBA. I think the players will be really ticked off. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here. But with the fact that there is an All-Star game scheduled, it does leave a little bit of doubt in how that's all going to work. Now, we also found out that the 2022 NHL Draft will be hosted in Montreal. Montreal was supposed to host the 2020 NHL Draft, which ended up being done virtually, of course, just like the 2021 NHL Draft will be. So we'll get back to having the draft in person back in the NHL arena, and we'll go back to Montreal, who was scheduled to host the first one that ended up getting canceled here once the pandemic hit. We also learned that there will be a Stadium Series game involving the Nashville Predators in February, and they are planning to do another Heritage Classic game up in Canada between a couple of Canadian teams sponsored by Tim Hortons, but we don't have the exact details as of yet. It's still in the planning stages, and it is expected to take place sometime during March of 2022. Now, before we jump into today's trade talk, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping into all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional video. I appreciate it. On to today's trade rumors, where I want to once again talk about Seth Jones and the Philadelphia Flyers. There's more and more reports popping up from various NHL insiders, many of them talking about it now, that the Flyers are really pushing hard for a Seth Jones trade, and we learned a little bit more about what players might be considered available by the Flyers. Doesn't mean all these guys are going to be involved, because it could be a smaller package or a bigger package, depending if Seth Jones signs an extension or doesn't, giving, because if he goes on a 1-year contract, like he has now, that's going to pay a lot less than what it'll be if they can work out an extension with him. We don't know at this point if the Blue Jackets have allowed Jones or anybody to speak with other teams on potential extensions as they engage in trade talks here around the NHL. But the Flyers are believed to possibly be willing to include a guy like Travis Sanheim on the blue line, as well as some younger forwards like a Morgan Frost, a Travis Konechny, and Nolan Patrick. We know that Patrick has been, expressing interest in getting a fresh start. That's not a huge surprise. Morgan Frost, not a huge surprise, still looking for more of an opportunity. I'm a little surprised they'd want to trade Konechny, but apparently if they get some their top right shot D that they really covet, then they're willing to entertain that. So it could be a combination of those players, or possibly even a first-round pick in the mix. And like I said, a lot of it is going to depend on whether or not he can sign or not. If Jones does not want to sign an extension, it looks like from what we're hearing that they're still interested in acquiring him. But to me, if I'm Philly, I'm not giving up a lot of young prospects just for 1 year of Jones if he's going to bolt. As much as it'd be great to have him next year, I would really only do that if I thought it was going to put me over the top to be like one of the top cup contenders. And I just don't see that with the Philadelphia Flyers. They were out of the playoffs this past year. They do have some good pieces. I think they could be a much better team with Seth Jones. I don't think I'd pencil them in as being a cup contender, though. So unless he's signing an extension, I'm not so sure that I would make that deal. Now, we also got word from the New York Post and Larry Brooks. It looks as though the Rangers are indeed in, or at least back in, I'm not sure what we want to call it here, on Jack Eichel. He's reporting that GM Chris Drury is indeed having conversations with the Sabres. It may or may not be more than just doing due diligence. I can't say with any certainty that those talks will progress to the point that they will make a deal and make an acquisition here on the top young center, who appears to be, ready to be traded sometime over the next few weeks as we approach the 2021 NHL draft. Obviously, the Rangers wouldn't have as high of a draft pick as some of the other teams that are rumored to be in the mix. So certainly debatable on where he ends up going. Like I said, there's been a lot of talk about which teams are out there. I know Columbus is a team that's had a lot of mentions when it comes to interested teams. We've heard the Rangers, we've heard the Kings, we've heard the Wild, we've heard the Blues, the Flames. It's all at different times here. Hard to say who's in and who's out. We've got different reports all the time about this team is back in the mix, this team's out of the mix. And you know what? I think it's still so early in the process that I don't know if really any team can honestly say with 100% certainty that they're out. Because I think as time goes on, the price tag is going to change. I don't think we're going to see Eichel go for as big of a package as Adams would like to get as of today. Based on the rumored asking price, it's going to have to come down. So it boils down to which teams are willing to kind of jump back in and out here and make offers if they really want to have a legitimate shot at making this happen. So I'm not really convinced yet that Eichel's going to the Rangers, but according to Larry Brooks, they're certainly interested, having exploratory talks, and we'll see if it goes any further than just that. Now, as I mentioned as well, there's certainly more and more word that the Edmonton Oilers really do appear to be interested in Oliver Ekman Larsson, and some think that maybe Connor Garland, who appears to be close to being traded as well, could be the piece that's included with Ekman Larsson to kind of entice and be like the sweetener in the package because of his contract. Now, I would still think that the Coyotes would have to retain a little bit of salary on Ekman Larsson's deal. And as I said before about the possibility of him heading to Edmonton, it's rumored that they will take back a bad contract in return to help offset the financial component, but they would prefer a bad contract that's shorter term and less money. So you get that with James Neal. So he's got another 3 years at $5.75 million. That really makes a huge difference there. You throw in some other pieces, and you know what? Maybe one other player off the roster, and plus based on whatever they retain, and it's not that huge of a cap hit. They got Nugent-Hopkins signed now, and they got a pretty good deal there. So they do have some other things to figure out and get signed. So clearly, there's a lot of balls in the air if you're Ken Holland, but it looks like it's something they're interested in. Now, Garland would provide that much-needed depth on the wing. They need wingers that can be that secondary scorer playing in your middle six, and they don't have a lot of that. And Garland would be a big upgrade in that regard, so he would be a nice acquisition if they can figure that out, if they do decide to go down that road. I read an article regarding the possibility of Darnell Nurse and OEL being defense partners. Seems like something Dave Tippett would probably be fond of. But again, it's going to have to boil down to money here because the Oilers do have, like everybody else, their fair share of cap issues and tight constraints to work around. Now, of course, when it comes to making a deal, they do have a decent amount of young players they could consider including to entice the Coyotes, who certainly want young prospects or draft picks. Now, the Edmonton Oilers, when it comes to defensemen themselves, they got Philip Broberg and Evan Bouchard. I'm not sure if they'd want to include either of those. They also have a guy like Caleb Jones, who's certainly looking for more opportunity. So any of those guys could possibly be discussed as an inclusion piece. In the forward group, you've got guys like Ryan McLeod. You've got obviously Tyler Benson's another possibility. He's a little bit older, but still a good-looking prospect. You got Raphael Lavoie, who's 20, played his first pro season last year. Thought he did pretty good. He split it between Europe and the American Hockey League, but had some good results. So they do have some interesting pieces there. Of course, you could throw in some draft picks too. So I think the Oilers have what it takes to get it done if they really want to push for it, but it's going to boil down to what the Coyotes will take back for income off of the Ekman Larsson contract. Would they take James Neal? That would have to be almost a must, you would think, given where everything is at. So we'll see, but looks as though Garland might be the enticing piece or the sweetener, I guess we could say, for teams to possibly take Ekman Larsson off the Coyotes' hands. Now, lastly here, I want to touch on Vladimir Tarasenko in St. Louis. We've talked about him before as being rumored to be on the trade block. Well, now it looks as though there's a lot more reports indicating that that's exactly the way it is. And it looks as though that Tarasenko and the Blues have talked about it and that he might have been given them a list of teams to work with. Now, of course, we don't know exactly who's on that list, but one team that I've seen reports on that appear to be interested is the LA Kings. We've heard other words about teams like the Ducks or the Panthers. I'm not real sure about that. We've seen one deal about the Calgary Flames too, but again, to me, that's not a deal that makes a ton of sense. Now, when it comes to LA is a team that I know wants top six forwards. When it comes to St. Louis, it's rumored and believed that they want to have a top six shuffling, so it kind of shake things up because since winning the Cup, they haven't really had that level of success. And so I understand from their standpoint why they'd want to do that. You can't rule out Washington here as well. We had talked about a real possibility of a Tarasenko for Kuznetsov trade. I would think he would probably, if he's going to be dealt, would consider waiving to go play with Ovechkin. So that's a possibility too. But the LA Kings, like I said, they're a team that I know want top six forwards. There's no doubt about that. And he has been linked there. Now, I don't know what the Blues would want in return. LA has a plethora of young prospects that would be very interesting to St. Louis. We could go on. There's a list a mile long of guys they could be looking to possibly include. Now, I can't see them including a guy like a Byfield or a Turcotte in that scenario, but there's lots of other intriguing guys. Samuel Fagemo would be one. You've got Jared Anderson-Dolan, who's not really a prospect anymore. He's more on the roster. You got Akil Thomas. You've got Sean Durzee's out there as well. There's a long list of prospects and some better ones that I didn't even mention here. So I do think the Kings have what it takes to pull it off, if that indeed is legitimate. But we'll see where it goes. But it looks as though Doug Armstrong and Vladimir Tarasenko are doing what they can to find him a new home for next season. So let me know where you think some of these players will end up in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.